Joe and Fred were helping to build a house in a village. The weather was very warm. There was a lot of dust everywhere, and by 12:30, they were very thirsty, so they stopped work to have their lunch. They found the nearest small bar, went in, and sat down with their sandwiches. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. What can I get you?" the man behind the bar asked. Joe looked at Fred and said, "Beer, I think." "Yes, a pint of beer each." "Is that all right for you, Fred?" "Yes, that's all right," Fred said. Then he turned to the man behind the bar and said, "And I want it in a clean glass. Don't forget that." The man behind the bar filled the glasses and brought them to Joe and Fred. Then he said, "Which of you asked for the clean glass?" Mrs. Jones did not have a husband, but she had two sons. They were big, strong boys, but they were lazy. On Saturdays, they did not go to school. And then their mother always said, "Please cut the grass in the garden this afternoon, boys." The boys did not like it, but they always did it. Then somebody gave one of the boys a magazine, and he saw a picture of a beautiful lawn mower in it. There was a seat on it, and there was a woman on the seat. The boy took the picture to his mother and brother and said to them, "Look, that woman's sitting on the lawnmower and driving it and cutting the grass. You want one of those?" "One of those lawnmowers?" his mother asked. "No," the boy said, "we want one of those women. Then she can cut the grass every week." Mr. Robinson never went to a dentist because he was afraid, but then his teeth began hurting a lot and he went to a dentist. The dentist did a lot of work in his mouth for a long time. On the last day, Mr. Robinson said to him, "How much is all this work going to cost?" The dentist said, £25, but he did not ask him for the money. After a month, Mr. Robinson phoned the dentist and said, "You haven't asked me for any money for your work last month." "Oh," the dentist answered, "I never ask a gentleman for money." "Then how do you live?" Mr. Robinson asked. "Most gentlemen pay me quickly," the dentist said, "but some don't. I wait for my money for 2 months, and then I say, 'That man isn't a gentleman,' and then I ask him for my money." When Pat was 21 years old, he began to work in a small office in a city. At first, he never traveled anywhere, but then he became a little more important and he began to go to other cities for a few days to do some work there. Of course, he stayed in a small hotels when he was away from his home, but he did not know very much about living in hotels at first. One evening, when he was staying in a small hotel in Sheffield, he came back from the office and said to the clerk at the desk in the hotel, "Good evening. Did any letters come for me today, please?" The clerk was busy, but when he finished his work, he went to a big pile of letters and said, "What name, please?" "Well," answered Pat, "the name will be on the letters." Mr. White has a small shop in the middle of our town, and he sells pictures in it. There are not expensive ones, but some of them are quite pretty. Last Saturday, a woman came into the shop and looked at a lot of pictures. Then she took Mr. White to one of them and said, "How much do you want for this one?" It was a picture of horses in a field. Mr. White looked at it for a few seconds and then went and brought his book. He opened it, looked at the first page, and then said, "I want 20 pounds for that one." The woman shut her eyes for a few seconds and then said, "I can give you 2 pounds for it." 2 pounds? Mr. White said angrily. 2 pounds? But the canvas cost more than 2 pounds. "Oh, but it was clean then," the woman said. Mr. Reese was a farmer. He and his wife grew a lot of things, and they had a few cows. They worked very hard. One day, Mr. Reese said to his wife, "Let's go to Portsmouth next Sunday. We can have a good lunch there, and we can go to the cinema." His wife was very happy when she heard that, because she and her husband always ate a lot, and she did not like cooking 3 times a day every day. They went to Portsmouth by train and walked about for an hour. Then, when it was 12 o'clock, they wanted to have a meal. They looked at several restaurants. In one of them, there was a notice outside. Lunch, 12:30 to 2:30, £1.50. "Well, that's good," Mrs. Reese said. "We can eat for 2 hours for £1.50 here. This is the place for us." Mr. and Mrs. Yachts had one daughter. Her name was Carol, and she was 19 years old. Carol lived with her parents and worked in an office. She had some friends, but she did not like any of the boys very much. Then she met a very nice young man. His name was George Watts, and he worked in a bank near her office. They went out together quite a lot, and he came to Carol's parents' house twice. And then last week, Carol went to her father and said, "I'm going to marry George Watts, Daddy. He was here yesterday." "Oh, yes," her father said. "He's a nice boy, but has he got any money?" "Oh, man, all of you are the same," the daughter answered angrily. "I met George on the 1st of June, and on the 2nd, he said to me, 'Has your father got any money?'" Miss Williams was a teacher, and there were 30 small children in her class. They were nice children, and Miss Williams liked all of them, but they often lost clothes. It was winter, and the weather was very cold. The children's mothers always sent them to school with warm coats and hats and gloves. The children came into the classroom in the morning and took off their coats and hats and gloves. They put their coats and hats on hooks on the wall, and they put their gloves in the pockets of their coats. Last Tuesday, Miss Williams found 2 small blue gloves on the floor in the evening, and in the morning she said to the children, "Whose gloves are these?" But no one answered. Then she looked at Dick. "Haven't you got blue gloves, Dick?" she asked him. "Yes, miss," he answered, "but those can't be mine. I've lost mine." He stopped near the city and looked at his map. Then he drove into London, but he did not find his hotel. He drove round and round for an hour, and then he stopped and got out of his car. A taxi came, and Hans stopped it. "Take me to the Brussels hotel," he said, but he did not get into the taxi. He got back into his car. The taximan left, but then he drove to the Brussels hotel, and Hans followed him in his car, then reached the hotel in 2 minutes. Few years ago, there were a lot of hijackings on airplanes, so now people always search passengers and their luggage at airports before they let them get into an airplane, because they do not want them to take guns or bombs or other dangerous things onto the plane with them. Mr. and Mrs. Smith were singers, and they traveled a lot. Whenever they went by plane, people searched them and their luggage, of course. One day, Mr. Smith came to the airport, and the man searched him and his luggage first. He was ready to get on the plane. Then Mrs. Smith arrived. She was late and in a hurry, but the people searched her and her bag carefully. Then Mr. Smith heard her laugh and said to the man happily, "Oh, that's very good. I've looked for those scissors for several days. Now you've found them for me. Thank you very much." Hans said to his friend Kurt, "I'm going to take my car and drive to London." Kurt said, "Driving to London is very difficult. You aren't going to find your hotel." But Hans was not afraid. He drove to Calais, put his car on the ship, took it off at Dover, and drove to London.